Begin today the Gemara at the last line of Zayin Amid Beis. It said in the Mishnah, "V'im Amra Tahoira Ani Mailan Oisal L'Shar Mizrach." So this woman, the Sotah, she's brought to the Beis Hamikdash, and they tried to persuade her to admit if she did anything wrong. But if she's strong and she says, "No, I'm pure," so then what happens? They bring her up. They bring her up to the Shar HaMizrach. Okay, so the Gemara asks on this. Maila Noisa, they have to bring her up now there to that place. Hasam Kaima, that's where she is. The Mishnah began that when they bring a woman a Sotah, they bring it to the Bezdin HaGadol. Where's the Bezdin HaGadol? Bezdin HaGadol is in the Lishkas HaGazis, which is built right by the Azara. It's actually half inside the Azara, half outside. So she's already there in that location. So why does it say Maila Noisa that we bring her up there? Answers the Gemara. What happens is the Maskinan law, they bring her up there, and then Machtinan law, they take her back down. The entire Arabayis, they take her back down. The reason they do this is Kedele Yaga, to get her exhausted. The Tanya, and it's a similar thing that it says regarding Eidim that come to say Eidos about someone that is Chayiv Misa. So also we want to exhaust these Eidim so that they should think over good and hard what they're saying. The Bezdin would take these Eidim from one place to another. You'll say a testimony here. No, let's say a testimony there. In order that they should lose their mind, and they should retract from wanting to say this Eidos. Similar here, we exhaust this woman so that if she really did an Aveda, she'll lose her confidence or strength, that is, and she'll admit to what she did. Then the Mishnah said, they brought her there to the entrance to the Azara, which is called Shar Nikner, and the Mishnah said that's the place where they would give the Sotah to drink the waters. That's the place where the Mitzayrain, they would purify the Mitzayra from his tzaras, and also the Ayeldis that has to bring karbanis after birth. Also, they would bring their karbanis there, and the Yeldis would stand there. Says the Gemara, now Bishleime Saitis, it's understood why a Sotah has to come right there in that entrance by the Azara. The Chsiv Vehemed Akaynes Isha Lefnei Hashem. When the Sotah, the Isha comes, so the whole process of the Sotah has to be done there, Lefnei Hashem. So therefore, we don't want it to be all the way in the Azara, because we don't know what's going to happen to her. So she stands there in the entrance of the door by the Shar Nikna, Lefnei Hashem. Mitzaron, Nami Dechsiv, by Mitzaron it also says, Vehemed HaKayin, HaMetayr V'Gaimer, that the Kayin HaMetayr has to bring the Mitzayra, and over there the Pasuk says also, Lefnei Hashem. That's why it's in that same place. But Elo Yeldis, but when it comes to a woman that gives birth and she has to bring the karbanis, my time. Why does she have to come and stand there in that area with her karbanis? If you're going to say the reason is Mishum Da'asyan V'Kaima Korbanayu, because she's bringing a carbon, and this is the carbon that's going to be metayr this woman completely, that after this she's able to eat from kachim. Until this point she's what's called a mechusar kippurim. She's lacking the karbanis that's brought. So in such a case she has to come and stand by her karbanis. Right? And the Rashi brings it, there's a pasuk that this is learned out from, that when a person is bringing a carbon, he should be standing there by his carbon. So that's why this woman that gave birth should be standing there by her carbon. The Tanya, and as we learned in the Braise, ein karbanis shel adam karev, a person's carbon is not brought in the Beis Hamikdash elam ken oimid al gabav, unless he's standing there by his carbon. And so that's why this Isha, this Yeldis, can't really enter into the Azara, but she has to stand there in the entrance by the Shar Nikner. But if that's the reason, ihachi, if so, zavin v'zaves nami, the zavin and zaves, which have a tumah that comes out of their body, and they also have to bring a carbon in order for them to be metayr themselves fully, to be able to eat kachim again. So they should also have to come and stand there. Why does the Mishnah never mention Zavin and Zavais? Answers the Gemara, you're right, Enochanami. The same halacha replies the Zavin and the Zavais that they have to stand there. The Tana, Choda, Minaya, Nokat. And the Tana says the Yeldis, but the exact same thing applies to the Zavin and the Zavais. A person that brings a carbon has to stand over there in that place. Tana Rabbanon, now we learned in the Braise, Ei Mashkin, Shtei, Saitis, Ka'achas. You don't give the waters of a Saita to drink to them, two women at once. Why not? So these two women that are there together should not be comfortable with one another, and they sort of take strength from one another, that one is not admitting, so the one says, if she's not admitting, I'm not going to admit either. Rav Yehuda says, this is not the reason. Ella, rather, you see it from the pasuk, it says, Omakra, Oisa, the pasuk there says, Vishbiya Oisa Kayin, Oisa Lavada, Oisa is singular, only one woman at a time. So that's the machlekes here. They both agree, but the question is whether you learn it from the pasuk or is there a reason here. So the Tanakama of this Braisa, there's a clear pasuk that it says one woman. Why does he have to give a reason? Answers the Gemara, Tanakama, Rab Shimon he. The Tanakama of this Braisa is Rab Shimon. The Darish Tam the Kra. Many times in Shas you find Rab Shimon darshans and explains the reasons of a pasuk. Umatam Kamar. And Rab Shimon is saying this is the reason for this halach of the pasuk. Matam Oisa Levada. What the reason? Why only one site at a time? So that one should not be comfortable with a friend to support each other. Okay, so now the point here is when Rab Shimon darshans a reason from a pasuk, he's not just giving you a reason. The halacha will not be defined by that reason. Right, and as the Gemara here right away spells out. My beinayu. So what's the difference between Rab Shimon that gives this reason, or if I say that it's a gzeiras hakasav without a reason? Ikke beinayu, the difference is reiseses. If we see that this woman is trembling, she's so afraid, she's not getting any support from her friend. We see that she's very afraid, but she's still not admitting. So over here, if it's the reason of Rab Shimon that we're afraid that she's getting support from a friend, we see that she's not getting any support from her friend. She's not admitting because she feels she's tired, so she's not going to admit. So there should be no reason why you can't do two saitis at once. But if it's gzeiras hakasav, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to have two saitis at once. The Gemara asks a question on this. There should be another issue with having two saitis drink the water at once. Even if she is so afraid, and according to Rab Shimon, there should be no issue. But we mashkin, could we have these two saitis drink the waters at the same time? There's another rule we have. Ein oisim mitzvahs chavilos. We never bundle mitzvahs together. And the reason for this is, Rashi says, if a person takes a couple of mitzvahs and bundles them together, it looks like that he's treating mitzvahs like a heavy load that he wants to get rid of it. So he's bundling it together. As we learned in the Mishnah, ein mashkin shtei saitis ka'achas. We don't give to drink two saitis at once. Ve'ein mitarin shnei mitzaroin ka'achas. We're not mitar two mitzaroin at the same time. Ve'ein reitzen shnei avodim ka'achas. And we don't drill the hole in the ears of two avodim that want to remain avodim. We also don't do that together. When it comes to egla rufa, if it happens two at once, we also don't do them together. And the reason for all of this is lefi she'ein oisim mitzvahs chavilos, because we never bundle two mitzvahs together. So over here, how could Rab Shimon say that as long as this woman is showing us that she's getting a support from a friend that's with her, then it's possible to do the two saitis at once? Why isn't that called chavilas? Abai answers, Vitema Rav Kahana, what Rav Kahana said, Loi kashit. It's not a question. Depends what the case is. Kan b'kayin echad. If it's one kayin, and this one kayin has these two women that he has to take care of that are saitis, and he does them both together, that's chavilas, the two mitzvahs that this one kayin is doing. But kan b'shnei kainim, if there are two different kainim that are attending to both of these women and they're doing it there in the azar at the same time, that's not called chavilas. Each kain is doing his mitzvah of taking care of the mitzvah of the saita, for the separate saita. Talk to Gemara, and then it said in the Mishnah about kain oiches bivgadeh, the kain grabs her clothing and tears her clothing. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa fara asrei sheisha, that the kain uncovers the hair of the woman. So only from the pasuk it says Reish Isha, would think that he only uncovers the hair. Gufa minayin, how do I know? He also uncovers her body, part of her body as well. Tamad loima ha isha. It doesn't just say a paras Reisha, but it says Reish ha isha. So that indicates that he uncovers part of her body as well. Imkei mat tamad loima paras Reish. So why does it say a paras Reish? Malamed shakayin saiser esaira. It's teaching me that the kain uncovers. If she has a hair that's braided, then the kain unties that, uncovers that. Then the Mishnah said that this halacha of uncovering the hair or uncovering part of the body of this woman in order for her to be disgraceful. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. If she's beautiful and this will cause people that are there to see this woman and cause them to have the inappropriate thoughts, so then he does not uncover her. So it's like the Gemara, lememre, shall we say that Rabbi Yehuda chayish lirhura? Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's concerned about hirhur, about people having this inappropriate thoughts. V'Rabbanan lo chayish, and the Rabbanan, as we see, are not concerned about this. There's another case where both the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda discuss a similar matter, and we see that they say the opposite. The Tanya, we learn a Braisa, and this is a Braisa that discusses regarding the halacha of how the einish of skila is done. So the einish of skila is done, the person is first undressed. So the Braisa there says, Ha'ish mechasen oisai perik echad melafanav. The man, so he's undressed, but there's one piece of cloth that's left to cover him in the front, that the erva should not be shown. But for ha'isha shnei prakim, a woman is covered two areas, echad melafanav, echad melafrev. From the front and from behind, it's all mipnei shekula erva. It's all considered to be a erva. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. But other than that, the clothing is removed before skila. However, the Chachamim argue and say, Ha'ish niskal adam. A man, the skila, is done when he's undressed, but va'en isha niskala saruma. But the woman is left with her clothing. So what do we see over here? That punkt verkehrt over here, Chachamim are the ones that say that the woman is left dressed, and Rabbi Yehuda says that even a woman is undressed. And our Mishnah said the exact opposite. Rabbi Yehuda was the one that said that the woman is left to be dressed, and Chacham are the ones that say that they uncover her clothing, partially at least. So there's a clear contradiction in both Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rabbe, so Rabbe answers, it depends on the situation. It's not the same thing. Hacha taima. Here, the reason why Rabbi Yehuda is concerned, taima, that is, what's the reason? Because Shema Teitza mi bezin zakos. Maybe she comes out of the bezin or comes out of this drinking of the Sotah here, and she's meritorious. And then what happens? So the young kainim that are there will be instigated by her, and they'll follow her. They'll go after she was uncovered. Okay, the Rashi over here actually is just interesting. Rashi mentions that it's lav dafke perche kohona. Any person, this can cause a hit or a bad to follow her, but the Pirchei Kohana were the ones that were there in the Beis HaMikdash at the time. So that's over here, because she herself may come out. Hasam ha-mistalka. She's going to die. Or the other gears here in the Gemara is mistakla. She's going to be stoned to death. So therefore, even if she's undressed, but she's not coming out alive, so therefore we're not concerned. If you'll argue and say, if they see her undressed, so this will come that they will then be instigated to follow another woman. So no, but Rava said, Gemiri, we know the this concern that they will follow her is only for this woman that they see, but not to follow someone else. So therefore, in that case of skila, Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned like over here. So therefore, this answers the contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. But Rava asks on this answer here, the Rabbi Yehuda kashya, the contradiction was only in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Rabbanan like kashya. The contradiction of the Rabbanan's opinion is not a contradiction. You're not answering that contradiction. Why the Rabbanan were actually more concerned over there regarding skila, and they said that dafka over there right by skila, she should be covered, she should be dressed. Why is that? So therefore Rava says, the Rabbi Yehuda like kashya kedeshana. The answer for the contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, so that we already answered. Rabbi Yehuda says that by skila we're not concerned because she's going to die. The Rabbanan, nami like kashya. The contradiction in Rabbanan's opinion, there's a different answer for that. It's not a question as well. And they have an opposite approach to this. Over here, the reason why there is the mitzvah that she should be embarrassed, so all other women that are there should see how she's being embarrassed, so they should know that they should not act like her. However, over there, there's no reason to additionally embarrass her. Over there, she's being stoned to death. So therefore, there's no reason to additionally undress her, to embarrass her. Now, if you may argue and say that maybe her punishment should consist of both of these, that she's dying and she should be embarrassed as well. But on this says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Va'ahavta l'reyacha kamoicha. And the mitzvah of Va'ahavta l'reyacha kamoicha applies even to a yid, even in this situation. B'roriloi misa yafa. Choose a misa yafa. She is going to die, but nevertheless, it's the death, but not the busha as well. So therefore, we leave her dressed in her clothing. So therefore, the Chachamim say, punkt fakert. But over here, there's a point, by Sotah, there's a point, dafka, to embarrass her. So therefore, we undress her partially. Mashenkin over there, when she's going to die, and so she's anyways getting this very harsh punishment, there's no reason to add to it. Applies even when a yid is going to die. Says the Gemara, and if so, based on this, Leme the Rav Nachman Tanoi. Maybe we should say that this point that Rav Nachman says that Va'ahavta l'reyacha kamoicha applies even here, is that a machlokes Tanoim. Because here we see that the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing whether this woman is undressed when she's going to the Misa. Does that mean that the Chachamim say that she's not undressed because of Ahavta L'Racha Kamocha? And Rabbi Yehuda says she is because we're going to give her both aspects of the punishment, both the Misa and the Busha. And he's not concerned about the Ahavta L'Racha Kamocha. Says the Gemara, Loi. They both are concerned about the Ahavta L'Racha Kamocha here, but the Kula Al Mislu de Rav Nachman, everybody agrees to what Rav Nachman says, and V'hacha B'ha Kamiflagi. Here, the argument is as follows. What is better for her? Mar Sovar Bizyoine Odef Leitfei Mitzara de Gufei. That it's more concerning to her, the fact that she's going to be embarrassed, than the pain, than the physical pain that she's going to experience. Meaning that if she's going to be dressed and this Misa of Skila, so her death is going to be prolonged. So therefore, even though her death is going to be prolonged, but nevertheless, her embarrassment, even though she's going to die, but her embarrassment is more hurtful for her, so therefore she'd rather be undressed, and so the death should not be prolonged. So that's more of a V'hafta L'Racha Kamocha. Omar Sava, the other opinion is Tzaira de Gufei Odav Leitfei Mibizyainei, the fact that if she's going to be dressed, so therefore her death is going to be prolonged, so therefore that's more important to her than the fact that she's going to be embarrassed. She'd rather that the clothing should be removed so that she shouldn't be, the death that is, should not be prolonged. So everybody agrees that the point over here is V'hafta L'Racha Kamocha, but the question is, what's more important to her, the fact that she wants to prevent the bizyainis, the embarrassment, or not to prolong her death?
What's prolonging death?
I guess when she's dressed, and they stone her, right? They stone her to death. So because she's dressed, she doesn't die as quickly. That 10 seconds, that 10-second difference is a difference, I guess, or whatever it is. Okay, sagt the Gemara, it said weiter in the Mishnah, Haise, Mechusa, Levanim, V'cholu. If she's dressed in beautiful white clothing, so they change it to more embarrassing and dark black clothing. Tana, so on the Braisa we learned, if black clothing is beautiful for her, so then that's not the point. So they put her on disgusting garments. Then the Mishnah says if she's wearing gold jewelry, they remove the jewelry. Says the Gemara, Pshita. Isn't that obvious? Why do we have to say, if we're doing all these things to embarrass us, you have to tell me that you remove her jewelry? We embarrass her to this extent. So has to tell me that we remove jewelry. The answer is, I would think to say, leaving her jewelry on is actually more embarrassing for her. People say about someone that shliach artel, he removes his clothing, and he's walking around in shoes without wearing clothing. Here as well, she's wearing all these embarrassing clothing, or it's partially removed, and she's still wearing her jewelry. So that is more of an embarrassment. Kamash V'lan, that's where the Mishnah says, no, that we remove the jewelry. The Mishnah said, maybe chevel v'cholo. We bring this chevel hamitzri, this rope that's made from something that comes from a palm tree, and we tie our clothing that it shouldn't totally fall down. So by Menei Rav Abba Merav Huna, so he asked Rav Huna the Shaila, chevel hamitzri mao sheyakev b'saita. This rope that we tie, it specifically has to be this chevel hamitzri. Is the point mishum shlo yishmetu b'gadel me'alau? Who? The idea here is that we're tying this rope, that our clothing shouldn't completely fall off. So therefore, it's lav dafka, this specific rope. Ubitziltzil cotton namisagi, any other tziltzil, any other belt, even whatever from other material would also be fine. It doesn't have to be dafka this chevel hamitzi. It's just an example. Or maybe mishum d'amamar. So the master explained what are we doing over here? This is later in the next Mishnah. So it says, maybe it's in a Braisa, no, it's in a, okay, we'll see. That he chagra loy b'tziltzul, she went and beautified herself, and she put on a beautiful belt when she came and she did the Aveda with this man. Lefichach kayin maybe chevel hamitzri v'koishel alamayla midadeha, and the kayin now brings this despicable belt, or this very cheap, not nice looking belt, and ties her garments that it shouldn't fall off of her. So therefore ma'akiv. So therefore, I should say that this has to be dafka, this chevel hamitzri. It's not just the point that the clothing shouldn't fall down, but it's midah keneged midah to embarrass her. So he said, we learned this, look what it says in the Mishnah, and we tie the clothing that it should not fall down. So the Mishnah says that clearly. The only point we're bringing this chevel hamitzri is not to embarrass her, but that her clothing shouldn't fall down. So therefore it doesn't have to be dafka this chevel hamitzri. It could be any other belt as well. Then the Mishnah said, whoever wants to come and see how this woman is being embarrassed should come and see this. Fragt the Gemara, Hagufa Kashya, the Mishnah contradicts itself. Amrit, in the beginning, the Mishnah says, Kol Araitza Liris Baraya. Whoever wants could come and see this. Alma, what do I see? Loishna Gabri, Veloishna Nashi. Makes no difference whether men or women. Everyone can come and see. But for Hadatani, then the Mishnah says, Kol HaNoshim Mutarais Liraisa. All women are allowed to come and see this. That means Noshim in, women yes, but Anoshim Lai. But for men, it's not their place to come and see this. So the clear contradiction here in the Mishnah. Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers, Tirgema, the way you should translate the beginning of the Mishnah, when it says Kol Araitze, you should translate this read the Aleph is read separately, Noshim, regarding women. True, it says Kol Araitze, but it does not mean men as well, as the Mishnah itself afterwards spells out. It means regarding women, that only women could come and see this. That is Abaye's answer. Amalei Rava, but Rava doesn't accept this. V'hakol hadreitze liris baraya katari. But the Mishnah says kol hadreitze. Everybody could come. So how could you say that goes only on women? Hello, Rava. So therefore Rava says kol hadreitze liris baraya. Anybody, including men, whoever wants to come and see, can come and see what's going on. Loishna gavri v'loishna nashi. No difference, men or women. V'nashim chayavais l'raisa. The women that are around over there, they're obligated to come and see what happens. Shanem, as the pasuk says, v'nivasru kol hanashim v'lo yisasena kizim mascheno, that they should take a musr from this and they should not act like she does. So they have an obligation to come and see. This pshat of Rava here in the Mishnah is also not such a clear pshat, because the Mishnah actually said, as the Gemara just quoted here, kol hanashim mutaris l'raisa, that the women are allowed to come. The Mishnah didn't say that they're chayiv. That's why Abai didn't want to answer this way. But according to Rava, you'll have to say that because in the beginning, when it spoke about the men, it said whoever wants could come, so it uses a similar terminology when it talks about the women. But really, it doesn't just mean mutarais, it means that they're obligated to come. Measure that a person measures for himself, in other words, according to his behavior, that is the way the Eibishter behaves with the person. Right, this is always brought the concept of midah keneged midah, and the Rebbe in one place brings it. This is connected to the famous word of the Baal Shem Tov, Havaya Tzilcha, that the Eibush is like a person's shadow. The way you behave, the Eibush behaves the same way. It's a natural response because of that connection that he has to the Eibush. So it brings about the same response, measure for measure. And therefore, over here as well, we see regarding the Sotah, measure for measure. He kashtas hatzmala aveda. She beautified herself with aveda. Hamakim nivla. The Eibush comes and makes her despicable. He gilses atzmal aveda. She exposed herself for aveda. Hamakim gila aleh. Hamakim gila aleh. The Eibusha comes and exposes her here in a way that she becomes despicable. B'yerech is chila ba'aveda. The aveda begins with the thighs. Tchila, beginning, v'ach kacha beten, and then the stomach. Lefichach tilka hayerech tchila. So therefore, when it comes to her stomach bursting, it actually says in the pasuk there the yerech first. The lashon of the pasuk is that b'seis Hashem is yireichech noifeles, the thighs fall, ves bitnech tzava, and then the stomach. So the Seder is the same way, the way she did Aveda. So again, lefichach tilka yerech tchila. First, the punishment is for the yerech, for the thighs, v'ach kacha beten, and v'shar kol haguf lo yipala. The rest of the body is not going to be saved either, because it was all involved in the hana and the pleasure of the Aveda. But we see here the idea of midah keneged midah. Sagt the Gemara, Rav Yosef, Afal gav the midah betela b'midah loy batel. Even though the measure of the einshim of the Torah are batel, what this is referring to is the einshim that we find in Torah, the dalad misas bezin, skila, sreifa, herek, and chenek, that the dalad misas bezin are batel, but b'midah loy batel. Meaning the fact that the Eibishter will come and bring about the measure of that kind of a punishment for a person, that's not batel. That could happen even today. Rav Yosef explained and said this: from the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Sanhedrin is bottle, but arba misas le bottle. The four different misas the Torah speaks about are not bottle. But they are bottle. Eladin arba misas le bottle. The din of the way these arba misas are done, similar. They're not bottle. It could happen to a person, God forbid. Mishin is chayiv skila, a person that would be chayiv skila, so oy neifel min agag. Or what could happen to him is he falls off of a roof, similar to skila when they they threw a person off a 2-story rooftop. Oy chayiv der sasai, or an animal, it will attack a person. So an animal also throws a person down in a similar way. So that's regarding skila. Mishin is chayiv sereifa, person that is chayiv sereife, oy neufel bedleika, or he gets burnt in a fire, oy nachash machishay, or the venom of a snake will burn him. Mishin is chayiv harige, one that's chayiv harige, oy nimsel malchus, either he will be given over to a king, capital punishment, and in those times it was through beheading, oy listen by an olive, or bandits, which also the same thing would happen to the person. Mishin is chayiv chanike, someone that's chayiv the misa of chanike, oy toiveh benar, or he will drown, and he'll the same kind of a misa as chanike. Oy meis besrunchi, or he passes away with srunchi, which is a kind of a sickness which is in the throat that causes a person a kind of a misa like strangulation. So we see that the midah of these kinds of misa still exist in the world. Tanya and Abraisa we learned. Hoy Rabbi said, Minayin, from where do we see shebimidah she'adam maidid ba maidid in light, at the same measure that a person behaves in, the Eibishter behaves with him, also measure for measure. Shanema, there's a pasuk that says v'sa'asa, in the shear of a saw. A saw is a certain amount, a certain measure. B'shalcha, the Eibishter sends the punishment to Rivena. The Eibishter sends a person down in this place of punishment to Rivena. The Eibishter fights and punishes the person. But the point of the word b'sa'asa means measure for measure, like a saw, like a measure. Says the Braise, ainli ela saw. In this pasuk, I see only when it's a large measure, like a saw. Minayin l'rabba is tarkev, chatzi tarkev, kav, reiva, chatzi reiva, tuman, uchla. These are all different kinds of measures, down to the smallest measure of an uchla. Meaning, the Eibishter will punish a person measure for measure, not only with big things, but even down to the smallest minute detail. It's all measure for measure. So minayin. Talmud Leima, there's another pasuk that says, ki kol sa'oin sayan berash. That kol sa'in sayan berash means that any kind of measure. Over here, this pasuk sa'in that the Gemara is teaching, that it refers to even smaller measures. So also the Eibishter will bring a rash, which is the punishment upon a person, that the person is punished measure for measure. Uminayin, and from where do we know shekol pruta or pruta? Every little pruta of an avera, every little thing of an avera, mitzdarefas l'cheshbon gadol. It all combines to one big count that the Eibishter takes on from what a person does, and the Eibishter punishes a person. In other words, a person shouldn't make a mistake and think to himself that he sees he does an avera and there's no punishment that comes to this, that the Eibishter forgot about him. That's not what it means. It's just that the Eibishter waits, and it's all mitzdaref to a big count. Talmud Leima, the pasuk says, achas la'achas, the Eibishter counts one with another, limtze cheshbon, and the Eibishter brings a cheshbon, and all the whole cheshbon together. Then after all of that, the Eibishter comes and punishes the person in the time when he punishes him. Okay, Simon b'tayv. Yeah, midah keneged midah in the good sense that a yid does a mitzvah, the Eibishter gives the person a schar midah keneged midah as well. Okay.